Well, there were a number of things, but I worked for a great guy. I don't think anybody could have done the job had it not been for Mr. Ricky. He was constantly advising and guiding, and I had so much confidence in him, I would have jumped off the bridge if he told me to do it. That's how much I believed in him. Sometimes I wonder if people ever saw the real me. Not Jackie Robinson, the ball player. Not Jackie Robinson, the man who broke baseball's color barrier. Just me. When you get to be my age, you spend a lot of time looking back. Funny thing is, the memories that stay with you aren't always the ones everyone else remembers. People like to talk about the cheering crowds, the stolen bases, the photographs. Those moments mattered, of course. But that's not what comes back to me when the room gets quiet. I remember sitting alone after games trying to wash another difficult day off my face before I walked through the front door. I remember wondering how much longer I could keep pretending the insults didn't bother me. I remember looking at Rachel and telling her I was fine even when we both knew I wasn't. For a long time, I thought that was simply my responsibility. If I complained, people would say I was weak. If I fought back, they'd say I never deserved the chance I'd been given. So I kept everything inside, year after year. Looking back now, I realize silence can become just as heavy as any burden you carry on your shoulders. People often ask if I'd do it all over again. That's not an easy question. I'm proud of what we accomplished. I'm grateful that little boys and girls grew up believing baseball belonged to everyone. If that was all my story had been, I'd tell you it was worth every sacrifice. But life isn't that simple. The hardest moments of my life didn't happen under the bright lights of a baseball stadium. They happened after the crowds went home. They happened inside my own house. They happened in hospital rooms. They happened the day I buried my son. Those are the memories I usually kept to myself. Maybe I wanted to protect the people I loved. Maybe I was trying to protect myself. Either way, I've carried those stories for a very long time. Tonight I'd like to tell you about the parts of my life that never appeared in the box score. Before I ever played my first game for the Dodgers, Branch Rickey asked me a question I'll never forget. He said, "Can you be brave enough not to fight back?" At first I didn't know how to answer. I'd spent my whole life believing that if a man disrespected you, you stood your ground. That's how I was raised. That's what felt right. But Mr. Rickey wasn't asking about pride. He was asking me to carry something much heavier. He knew people would insult me before they ever watched me play. He knew pitchers would throw inside. He knew some players would try to provoke me into losing my temper. He even knew there would be teammates who didn't want to share the same clubhouse. He wasn't guessing. He was preparing me. The first few weeks felt longer than an entire season. Every city seemed to have someone waiting to remind me I didn't belong. Sometimes it came from the stands. Sometimes it came from the other dugout. Sometimes it came from people who never even learned my name. There were moments when every part of me wanted to answer back. I wanted to tell them they were wrong. I wanted to tell them I had earned my place just like everyone else. Instead, I lowered my head and walked away. People thought that made me strong. The truth is, it made me tired. It's exhausting to swallow your anger every single day. You carry those words home with you. You hear them long after the stadium is empty. Even now, I can still remember a few of those voices, not because they were louder than everyone else, because I never gave myself permission to answer them. That was the bargain I made before I ever put on a Dodgers uniform. I gave up the right to defend myself so that maybe someday another black player wouldn't have to make the same sacrifice. I believe that was worth it. Most days I still do. But I won't pretend it didn't leave scars. The people who paid the highest price weren't always the ones standing on the baseball field. They were waiting for me at home. Rachel never asked for this life. When we married, we dreamed about the same things every young couple dreams about. A home where we'd raise our children, quiet evenings together, a future that felt normal. Normal never came. There were nights when the telephone rang after midnight. I'd answer, and all I'd hear was a stranger telling me I should never have worn a major league uniform. Sometimes they threatened me. Sometimes they threatened my family. I stopped telling Rachel about every call because I didn't want her carrying the same fear I carried. She always knew anyway. You can't hide that kind of worry from the person who loves you. When I left for another road trip, she'd smile and tell me to play well. Then she'd wait. Wait for me to come home. Wait for the next newspaper headline. Wait for another day to pass without receiving terrible news. I don't think people understand how lonely that must have been. While the country watched me play baseball, Rachel was fighting her own battle in silence. She had to stay strong for our children when I wasn't there. She had to answer their questions when they were too young to understand why some people hated their father. No baseball trophy can repay a woman for carrying that burden. Sometimes I wonder if history remembers the wrong hero. People remember my name because I stepped onto the field. Rachel deserves to be remembered because she helped me walk back onto it the next day. There were evenings when I'd come home completely worn out. She didn't ask me to explain every insult. She'd simply sit beside me. Sometimes we didn't say anything at all. Looking back, those quiet moments probably saved me more than anyone will ever know. Baseball gave me a place in history. Rachel gave me the strength to survive it. And if I'm being honest, I don't think I could have done one without the other. People always ask me if baseball was the hardest thing I ever did. It wasn't. Playing the game was the easy part. Living with everything that came after was much harder. I love stealing bases. I love the sound of the crowd when I beat a throw by a split second. For a few moments, nothing else mattered. It was just me, 90 feet, and a chance to change the game. But baseball has a way of collecting its debt. Every hard slide left another bruise. Every collision reminded me that my body couldn't keep saying yes forever. Back then, nobody talked much about pain. If you could stand, you played. If you could swing the bat, you stayed in the lineup. That's what I did. There were mornings when getting out of bed hurt more than any play from the day before. My legs felt heavy, my hands were stiff. I told myself it was just part of growing older. Years later, my health began slipping away. The diabetes became harder to control. Then my eyesight started failing. That frightened me more than any fastball ever had. Imagine spending your whole life depending on your eyes only to watch the world become a little blurrier every year. I tried not to let people notice. I'd smile for photographs. I'd shake hands. I'd tell old baseball stories. Most people had no idea how much I was struggling just to see the faces standing in front of me. That was a difficult thing to accept. I had spent so many years refusing to let the world defeat me. Now I was fighting my own body. You can't argue with illness. You can't outrun it. All you can do is wake up the next morning and hope it's a little kinder than yesterday. Baseball taught me how to be tough. Life taught me that toughness doesn't always win. Sometimes it simply helps you endure one more day, and in the end, that's all any of us can really ask for. Nothing in my life prepared me for losing my son. Not the hatred, not the pressure, not even the years I spent carrying the weight of being the first. A father isn't supposed to bury his child. When Jackie Jr. was born, I held him in my arms and made the same promise every father makes, even if he never says it out loud. I'll do everything I can to protect you. I meant every word. But life doesn't always give fathers that choice. As he grew older, I could see he was carrying burdens of his own. After serving in the military, he struggled with addiction. Watching him fight that battle was heartbreaking because there was no baseball lesson I could pass along, no speech that could make everything better. I wanted to fix it. I couldn't. Then something beautiful happened. He found his way back. He worked hard to overcome his addiction. He began helping other young people who were facing the same fight. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could finally breathe. I remember thinking, maybe the hardest days are behind us. I couldn't have been more wrong. The phone call came without warning. A car accident. Just like that, my son was gone. 24 years old. People came to comfort me. They said the things people always say after a tragedy. He knew you loved him. It wasn't your fault. You couldn't have changed what happened. I nodded. But when everyone went home, those words disappeared. The question stayed. Did I spend too much time trying to change the world and not enough time simply being his father? Could I have called him one more time? Could I have visited him more often? Those questions followed me for the rest of my life. I've lived through hatred that filled stadiums. I've lived through pain that made headlines. None of it came close to standing beside my son's grave. History remembers the games I won. My heart remembers the loss I never recovered from. As I sit here thinking about my life, I don't measure it by batting averages or stolen bases anymore. Those numbers meant something once. Now they feel very small. What stays with me are the faces. The teammates who stood beside me when it wasn't easy. The strangers who quietly thanked me years later. Rachel, who carried more than anyone ever asked her to carry. And my son, whose smile I still see whenever my mind wanders back to happier days. People have called me brave for most of my life. I appreciate that. But bravery isn't what I remember. I remember being afraid. Afraid I'd let people down. Afraid I'd lose my temper. Afraid my family would pay the price for the path I had chosen. The difference is that fear didn't get the final word. I kept walking. Not because I was stronger than everyone else. Because I hoped the road would be easier for the person coming after me. If my story has taught me anything, it's that the greatest victories rarely feel like victories while you're living them. They feel like sacrifice. They feel like exhaustion. They feel like wondering whether anyone will ever understand what it cost. Maybe that's all right. Not every scar needs to be seen to be real. If one day a young ball player steps onto a major league field without carrying the burdens my generation carried, then every difficult moment was worth something. That's enough for me. When my time is remembered, I hope people don't only remember the man who changed baseball. I hope they remember a husband who loved his wife, a father who loved his children, a man who wasn't perfect, who got tired, who carried doubts, who hurt more than he ever admitted, because that's who I really was. And after all these years, that's the story I wanted to leave behind.